So what does sex look like from all the images and experiences that you had? So, and we want you to think about this. First, there's a quick progression. Again, images, movies,
television shows, everything that we've been socialized our whole lives to see. When sex is portrayed,
what do you see? This is literally what we're talking about. So first thing I want you to think about is that there's a really kind of swift progression from sort of coming up and touching and kissing each other to clothes coming off, right? That usually happens pretty quickly. You with me?
And so we're just gonna lay it out. This is what you're gonna see. This is what we see. If you're watching movies, or watching television shows, we're reading stories about it, whatever it is, people talking about this is so the progression to sex to clothes coming off pretty quickly, and
then there's the naked. People are naked and they're bouncing on top of each other, right? Get that image?
And fast, hard body thrust movements.
And then there's a lot of heavy breathing. It gets faster and faster, faster and faster until there's some kind of peak.
And then
they just fall into each other's arms in this kind of exhaustion, whatever you want to call that. Exhaustion?
Yeah. Exhaustion. Yeah.
Relief,
completion,
right? So you picture that. We described sex that's designed for a man.
And it's the ideal way in which sex happens with men, because men get aroused really fast. Things in their bodies happen really fast. They can move toward the intercourse piece, rarely, very quickly. And when it's over, and we know the other piece about this, is when they fall into each other's arms from exhaustion, it's just because they've both orgasmed. It's over, right? And so that's what the exhaustion is about. Every time. When is sex over? Sex ends when the man ejaculates. Okay.
And also, just as a side note, a lot of times we talk about social issues and maybe we're not connected to them, or it's hard to see sometimes how you're connected to them, or it's a little bit distant. By the time that this is over, you will see how the social world and your personal world are fused.
They collide.
Fused.
All right. So, slide 5 here.
And this is important, right? We grow up this way. We see two people in a heterosexual relationship having an orgasm together.
And then they collapse in each other's arms, and they're both really satisfied, and they feel really good. And it's that look, come on, that's just a beautiful moment right there. They are both completely happy and into it and in love and the whole 9 yards, because that's how it rolls out.
And so the idea is when we engage in sex, when a man and a woman engage in sex, the way a man's body is built to have sex, we assume that a woman's body would just be naturally pulled to orgasm at the same time, right? That's just the foundational assumption.
So here's the issue.
However,
through intercourse, only 25% of women can reach an orgasm. So that way in which we depict sex is shown in movies and the video and the television and so on, for 75% of all women in the world. That is not satisfying. It's not going to be satisfying unless something else happens that is rarely depicted and rarely shown.
And also think about what is happening if in that moment of peak and exhaustion, right, most women are not having an orgasm. They aren't actually having that peak.
So they're not really exhausted. Nothing really happened except this dude was bouncing up on top of them, and they're like, when the hell is this going to be over with? That's where the exhaustion is going to come, unless something else has happened.
In their most recent hookup, say it again.
75% of men had an orgasm. Hookup is not intercourse necessarily. So 70% of men, 35% of women. So presumably something else, because it's 35% happened, something else happened. Listen, during oral sex, and we're not talking fellatio, we're talking cunnilingus, 60% of men report that their partners have had an orgasm. 60%. By contrast, The women who say they actually did have an orgasm is 25%. So even lying there's a lot of lying going on. There's a lot of pretending going on. There's a lot happening where people are not being honest, even during oral sex. It's hard to pretend during oral sex. And yet it happens. So if you're pretending during oral sex, you're also going to be pretending during intercourse. Are we good? So here.
So there's more, but there's more.
But I think the biggest thing that you always say is a lot of women still just feel satisfied because you learn to be satisfied if your partner is satisfied, if your male partner is satisfied.
Yeah, I mean, for sure. This is something we know, that there's intimacy in that the embrace, in that kind of, what is there? There's satisfaction in that intimate moment, right? But it gets complicated. We're going to keep talking about why it's. I want to get to that before.
Okay.